Welcome back to Varsity Blue. Through the magic of TV, we were able to get everyone out and Andy in. Andy, good to have you.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be in the WOLV studios.
Sports director of WCBN, a new segment we're going to do a few times this year, bringing in some other students to put perspective on this Michigan team. So we'll get things started. This is the third year in a row Michigan has kind of won their opening game handily and then won in exciting fashion against Notre Dame. Is there anything to make of this?
Well, I mean, I don't really think you can read too much into it. Michigan the last 3 years has played kind of, I mean, UConn wasn't, but kind of cupcake opponents to start the season. And, you know, they're going to win those games. They're going to win them big. And Notre Dame, always a big game, big rivalry game. They're going to get up for it. It's not some kind of letdown effect after a season opener. I think really what it comes down to is the last 3 years, Michigan has had tremendous late, fourth quarter comebacks orchestrated by top quarterbacks. You just got to chalk it up to Tate, Denard, the last 2 years, just putting together big comebacks. Don't really think you can read anything into, Michigan being more up for the game or Notre Dame being more prone to choking. I think it's a little unfair.
Denard Robinson won his fourth Big Ten Offensive Player of the Week this year, but you saw in the highlights a couple costly turnovers. That one, both of them actually intended for Jeremy Gallen, the one down near the goal line especially. But when it mattered, he was good. But still, with 3 interceptions and completing less than 30% of your passes through 3 quarters of the game, can you win that honor?
Well, I think it's just a huge testament to the respect that Denard, has nationally. Apparently, nobody watched the first 3 quarters because we were all. I mean, people were calling for Devin Gardner to be brought in the game and maybe move Denard out to wideout. So it's just a testament to how respected he is that he can have as poor of a first 3 quarters as he does and then come back with a huge fourth quarter. He's electrifying. He's a game changer. And people are talking about him. ESPN has him as the Heisman frontrunner right now after an 11 completed pass performance. I mean, this is the kind of hype that he has, and I think it's nice to see that a Michigan player has this kind of respect nationally. And, the Heisman always looking for that kind of electrifying signature moment, and Denard had it.
Now, the running backs were featured a lot against Western Michigan, but were nowhere to be found. Less than 10 yards of rushing between the running backs. What do you chalk up to that, and how is that going to work going forward?
Well, it's just not good enough. Michigan needs to have a running back. They need to have somebody who can carry the load 15, 20 times a game, so Denard's not, taking all of the punishment when he's running the ball. And Michigan needs a running back that defenses have to respect, so that Denard, when he's in that I form, when they're doing the play action, defenses have to respect the possibility that Michigan's going to run the ball. Michigan ran play action out of the I form all night, and Notre Dame never had to worry about, are they really going to hand it off to Steph Hopkins? Because he's going to run into the line and pick up 3 yards. And 3 yards would have been his biggest carry, by the way. So, I mean, Michigan needs running backs to emerge, and really it's troubling because we've had 4 years of Mike Shaw. We've had, this is Steph Hopkins' second year. Vincent Smith, we know what these guys are, and really it seems like none of them are good enough.
Tale of 2 halves are really 3 quarters and 1 quarter, with less than 100 yards of offense in the first half and only 3 first downs. What do you make of the difference? And then also after the game, Brady Hoke was interviewed by Erin Andrews, and basically, rather than being joyous, basically said, we weren't good enough. So first they ask you, explain the difference between the first 3 quarters and the last, and then what you think about a coach stepping up right after an emotional win and saying, we weren't good enough.
Well, I mean, Michigan starts the game 3 and out, comes out completely flat, and Al Borges' play calling definitely seemed suspect. Michigan was lining up Denard in the I form a lot, and as we said, it's not effective when you don't have to respect the option that Michigan might actually hand the ball off and not use Robinson. So the play calling was suspect. Every time Michigan handed the ball off to a running back, it was a 2-yard gain at most. And that they just never really got into a rhythm, and Michigan still really trying to figure out their offensive identity with Denard Robinson. They don't really know, people still don't really know if he can be that pocket passer, and we saw a lot of jump balls and whatnot from him. Fourth quarter, again, not all that much changed. He was in the shotgun a little more, but and you guys were discussing it earlier with the luck versus clutch. Michigan got lucky on a lot of that, and a lot of jump balls that really, Junior Hemingway is proven to be a clutch performer for Michigan, but a lot of luck, and cards just kind of fell Michigan's way in the fourth quarter. And Brady Hoke, master of coach speak, he's always, I can't imagine, if Michigan had won 49-0, he'd have some kind of problem with the way Michigan played, and that's just kind of the Brady Hoke mentality. You don't call it coach speak, it's Hoke speak.
Hoke speak. All right, well, on that note, we are going to have to send it to commercial break. Again, Andy Goddeeris, you can catch him and the rest of WCBN 6 to 6:30, Monday through Thursday, 88.3 WCBN FM in Ann Arbor or WCBN.org. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll be right back. Hey, we're back to normal. Adam Brewster, Kevin Twill, David Nows. Not a great weekend for the Big Ten. They went 7-5 this weekend. Let's take a look at some of the results. How others did this weekend. Minnesota losing to USC. That's actually last weekend. Around the Big Ten. Our fault there. We apologize for that. Either way, 7-5, a couple big losses. Minnesota losing to New Mexico State. Indiana losing to Virginia. Purdue losing to Rice. Penn State losing to Alabama.
Iowa State.
Iowa lost to Iowa State in a triple overtime thriller. And then some tough wins. Toledo almost beat Ohio State. Fresno State kept it close against Nebraska. So we can bring it back. A tough weekend for the Big Ten, but we'll start down in Columbus, where the Buckeyes had a tough weekend with the Rockets, something that Michigan students got to enjoy throughout the early part of their day. David, is it just the fact that the Tatooligans are gone right now?
This was awesome watching this game. I know my tailgate completely ceased to exist. Everyone went inside, watched this game, and it was fun to watch as a Michigan fan. I think Ohio State did not look very good. 3-12 on third down. Bowserman was only 16 for 30. That's arguably worse than Denard played passing. And it took OSU 34 carries to amass 112 yards on the ground against a MAC team. That's just something that's unacceptable for a team like Ohio State.
Let's be realistic though. Toledo looked very good in this game, if not for a costly turnover at the end, along with a penalty, and then they kicked it again, and then they returned the punt, and then that turned out to be the winning score. So Toledo easily could have won this game, and they're a very good team, I think, in the MAC.
Now, David, Penn State played Alabama. Last year, Alabama just steamrolled the Nittany Lions. This year, the score a little bit closer. Matt McGloin 1 for 10 for 0 yards. Robert Bolden only mustered up less than 100 yards. Penn State only 250 yards total. Is Alabama that good, or Penn State, is it going to be a long year in Happy Valley?
I think it's a mix of both. Alabama's a good team. They'll be a 9-3, 10-2 team in the SEC, but Penn State really did not look good. They allowed 196 yards on the ground, 4.8 average, and 3 turnovers to Alabama's and 0. That's just not going to cut it.
Yeah, it was a tough weekend for Joe Pa. He had the troops fired up Friday night at that pep rally that they like to do. And then we go to Iowa, normally an uneventful state, an eventful football game, triple overtime thriller for what used to at least be known as the Cy-Hawk Trophy. The Hawkeyes struggled to move the ball. They turned the ball over they forced 3 turnovers, but their offense just doesn't seem to be clicking right now, Kevin.
Definitely not clicking for Iowa, but I want to talk about Iowa State for a second. That's a huge win. Big 12 looks to be dissolving. Iowa State looks to be left behind. Haven't beat their rivals in 3 years. Got a big win here against Iowa in Triple OT.
It certainly was huge, and we'll see how things play out in Iowa City. Iowa's a tough vote. We all picked Iowa. Maybe time for a little bit of reconsideration, but that game's not until November. We've got a little bit of time to sort things out. And again, Michigan didn't exactly look that great. They could have easily ended the game just as Iowa did, losing on a field goal in triple overtime. Next week, our friends from Ypsilanti come into town. Mike Hart, the running backs coach, and Ron English, the head coach. They're 2-0 for the first time in a long time, and they're rushing the ball like madmen. So we'll start on defense, and David, Mike Hart is coaching these running backs unbelievably. What's the Michigan defense going to be able to do? They allowed 200 yards last weekend.
Well, Greg Madison's probably going to put 8 in the box. I don't think he's going to let Eastern Michigan run all over Michigan. In fact, I know he won't. Michigan will first and foremost focus on stopping the Eastern Michigan running attack, and I think that's really all they're going to need to stop.
Kevin, on the offensive side of the ball, we talked about the running game a little bit with Andy. We saw mostly running backs in week 1. We saw mostly Denard in week 2. Now that it's back to a MAC school, are we going to see mostly running backs again?
Yeah, I think you're definitely going to want to establish the ball on the ground first and foremost, and also Denard in the pocket. Probably a little light running game for Denard. You don't want to see him getting injured against Eastern, and it should be wrapped up by the second half, and you might even see Devin Gardner in this game.
David, special teams looked a little better. Michigan returned kicks for almost about 20 yards, only allowed 15 yards per return. No blocked extra points, but they also chose to take a shot at the end zone, which is a big risk rather than kicking a field goal and being safe.
Yeah, I think if you're a Michigan fan, you want to see Brendan Gibbons trot out there for at least one field goal this week. We haven't seen it yet. He's made all of his extra points except for that one blocked against Western. But really, if you're Michigan, you need to see Brendan Gibbons out there making a field goal. And then also in the return game, don't give up 35, 40-yard returns like you did against Western. That's something that just can't happen. And I think Brady Hoke and the Michigan staff will really focus in on that this week.
But there's been some injuries on Michigan. Notably, Troy Wolfolk has looked slow and he's hurt himself in each of the past 2 games. Fitz Toussaint with a banged up shoulder, he didn't play. That's part of the reason why the running backs struggled. So Kevin, real quick, what do you make of these injuries now that you have games that you should win easily in Eastern and San Diego State? A little bit of rest?
Well, I think Troy Wolfolk at least has to get out there and show that he can prove it on a week-to-week basis after not playing last week. And then Fitz, through his whole career, Michigan hasn't really been able to stay on the field. Just had a banged-up shoulder, but the coaches didn't like what they saw in practice, so they kept him out. They might even keep him out this week, too.
And it'll be interesting to see if Fitz Toussaint comes in. Real quick, guys, we got about a minute to go. What's your predictions, David, starting with you?
I think Michigan will win the game. Hopefully no one gets hurt. I'll say 51-17. I don't think this is going to be as close as the Western game, and if the Western game would have gone 4 quarters, I think you would have seen a score more like that. So I'll go 51-17 Michigan.
I'll probably go 35-3 Michigan. I don't see Eastern moving the ball much against the Michigan defense, and I see Denard having a big game this game.
Wow. Man, you guys are confident. I'm pretty confident too, though. I think Michigan's going to hang 42 on Eastern, and they're going to put up 14. They might score those 14 early on. Don't panic, folks. Everything will be okay. Thank you for coming once again. We'll be back next week, hopefully talking about a huge Michigan win. For Kevin Twill, David Nowes, I'm Adam Brewster. We'll see you next week.